This is apropos. Well, the state visit is mixing royal pageantry with tough political talks, particularly on defence and migration. The French President is vowing to work towards tangible results to curb cross-channel irregular migration ahead of a summit where the issue is set to feature prominently. Emmanuel Macron was speaking during an address to the British Parliament on the first day of his three-day visit to the UK. With the latest, here's Morgan Eyre.
Britain's parliamentarians were on their feet for French President Emmanuel Macron. He delivered a wide-ranging speech from the war in Ukraine and protecting Europe from disinformation to the future of the Middle East. But one of the thorniest issues between the UK and France remains illegal migration across the Channel and how to reduce the number of small boats crossing. Macron stressed cooperation, saying that it was important to work together.
We cannot allow our country's rules for taking in people to be flouted and criminal networks to cynically exploit the hopes of so many individuals with so little respect for human life. France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness.
But now the real work begins. Macron will be having a bilateral meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and migration will feature high on the agenda. French police are taking a tougher approach to reducing the number of migrants, such as slashing the inflatable boats. But the UK leader is pressing for a one-in, one-out deal. This deterrent would allow Britain to send migrants who have crossed the Channel illegally back to France. In return, the UK would accept asylum seekers with a connection to Britain. However, France's president could face pushback from other EU members, particularly those next to the Mediterranean Sea. Those countries fear they may be forced to absorb extra asylum seekers. In his speech, the French leader added it was part of a wider problem.
And we will only arrive at a lasting and effective solution with as well the action at the European level and the cooperation, especially of the countries of first entry on the European soil.
Macron's three-day stay is the first state visit to the UK by a European Union head of state since Brexit, and both countries will be keen to reset relations.
Well, for more on what's at stake, we're joined by Carmine Conte, Senior Legal Policy Analyst at the Migration Policy Group. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme this evening. There have been seemingly months of negotiations between London and Paris on this thorny issue of migration. Carmine Starmer, the British Prime Minister, attempting apparently to secure what would be called a one-in, one-out agreement with France. How would such a deal actually work in practice?
Good evening, everyone. This sounds like an important agreement on migration that seems like a win-win for France and the UK, but who is losing here, it's really, I would say, humanity, because this is really an agreement that goes at the expenses of migrants. Two main points have been achieved during this negotiation. On one side, the French police would be allowed to intervene in shallow waters up to 300 meters from the coast to intercept small boats with migrants. And another point that also you mentioned is the one-in, one-out agreement, according to which the UK will be able to return small boats with migrants to France, and in exchange will take asylum seekers that have strong family ties in the UK. These are the main points that have been agreed on so far.
And how complicated would it be to put such policy in place in practice, both legally and operationally, Carmine? Because some officials in the UK are warning that it could lead to a surge in crossings ahead of the implementation of any such deal.
Indeed, the implementation will be a problem. This is really a short fix to the main problem, but it's not a long-term solution. It's a short-term deterrence to migration. But this agreement doesn't really address the roots of the problem. That are the lack of real pathway, legal and safe pathway for migrants to get to the UK, but also in general to Europe. This means that we will have the risk that migrants will have to even take even more dangerous routes to go to the UK. And we know that this year many people actually already died in the channel. So this agreement also risks that this number will actually increase in the next years.
And if such an agreement is reached, Carmine, over the next couple of days, some southern European countries, they're already expressing concern about the possibility that France might end up sending asylum seekers who are returned by the UK back to wherever they entered the EU, and that would be these countries on bordering the Mediterranean.
Yes, that's another effect of this agreement that is going to have a detrimental impact actually on southern European countries, because actually the migrants that will be returned to France from the UK will be sent back actually to Spain, Italy, or other southern European country, because there is the rule in the Dublin regulation according to which the first country of entry is the country responsible for processing an asylum application. So as we know, migrants come first to Southern Europe and then try to get their way to the UK through France. But France is not legally responsible, for taking their application. So this agreement will be very burdensome for Southern European countries that are really at the front line of the European migration flows.
Yeah, and let's speak a little bit about that, because Libya has also today unveiled a plan to reduce migrant flows to the EU, separate to what's happening in the UK this week. But the bloc's willingness to assist Libyan authorities in their crackdown on migrants, that's also been strongly criticised by human rights groups. How problematic is that for you?
It's problematic. There are many reports, evidences from NGOs, researchers that the Libyan authority, the coast guards have perpetrated serious criminal offenses and human rights violation towards migrants. To not talk about the conditions that migrants have to face in detention center in Libya, where they are stuck for years and they are tortured and really where dignity is really undermined every day. So it's very controversial to try to also get an agreement with Libya, actually as a partner on migration. What Europe is really showing here very hostile, let's say a punitive approach towards migrants. We should instead have more a welcoming approach and try to instead provide some alternatives for migrants to come here in a safer way. Because now the only way for migrants is to resort to smugglers to come to Europe and take very dangerous trips through the Mediterranean or through the Channel. So we should try to invest more in human corridors, in sponsorship programs, humanitarian visas that seem more safe and legal ways for migrants to come here.
And Carmine, the European Union, it also seems to be softening its stance when it comes to third country processing. Italy is already doing this with Albania, but what kind of legal pitfalls would these so-called return hubs face if they were to be introduced on a more widespread basis?
Yeah, the return hubs is one of the main controversial points of the return regulation that has been proposed by the Commission this year and gives the legal basis for member states to establish these return hubs, but it's not actually clear what these return hubs are and what kind of procedures and policies will be implemented in these return hubs. It seems that we are going towards an externalization of asylum and return policies in third countries. And this raised concern because we don't know in these third countries which kind of safeguards, which kind of legal procedures, what kind of level of protection of human rights will take place. And so this is kind of controversial because we must ensure that people have a fair access to the right to asylum procedures. And also in case of return procedures, we have to make sure that also the people that are returned to their country of origin still experience a fair return procedures. And this can be undermined in the framework of externalizing return procedures to third country where we don't know what actually is happening there. And also in terms of also financially, in terms of the impact on the economic of the European Union, these procedures are very expensive and costly, and so we will have to assess and monitor in the long term how these procedures will be implemented and what kind of also financial impact will have on the member states.
And Carmine, if a deal is reached, let's say, between Paris and London this week, do you think that could become a pilot for the rest of Europe, as the British government is already suggesting?
There is the risk that this pilot project will also be applied by other member states. I will not be surprised because this is the trend across Europe now, to really push for more returns, to really curb on irregular migration, but without really establishing a safe and legal pathway for migrants to come to Europe. And also this is a bit worrying that now there are all single member states that are trying to make agreements with third countries, also with the UK, on migration. Instead, we should have a European common asylum system in place. You know, immigration is a common shared policy at a European level. Instead, we are seeing that member states are really leading on their own on this topic. Instead, we should have, and this showing that the asylum system now is really failing. And instead, we should invest more on a better and fair asylum system for all the European Union.
Carmine Conte, Legal Policy Analyst at the Migration Policy Group. Thanks so much for joining us on the programme this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's it from us for now. Do stay with us, though, for more world news here on France 24.